Welcome to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I'm out here in my backyard. You can see my other side. You can see my old cabin right there. There's the old door. And then my forest and yard in the background. I had a wonderful discussion with my dear friends, Judson and Debbie Donovan. And they had to Ask the Backyard Professor Anything discussion with me. And I'm going to share that, and I'm going to intersperse some other comments, further ideas I want to elaborate tonight on. We had an absolute ball, but there was some deep and profound ideas that I want to share and elaborate on, because you know me, once I get talking, all kinds of stuff comes out that you probably haven't heard of or heard in the way that I express it. At least I've been told that. Hopefully, yeah, the sun's going down. Hopefully I won't wiggle too much and put the sun in your eyes. So let's get started. Let me share my screen real quick. Oh, and I want to do this one. Yeah, there we go. Let me do that. Okay, let's share the screen and we're ready to roll. Ask the Backyard Professor Anything. Yes, sirree, Bob. Here we go.
One thing I never thought of until I saw the Book of Mormon musical is that if Adam-on-Diamond was there, that was where civilization spawned, right?
Yeah.
And somewhere,
someone needs to call Africa.
Yeah, somewhere near there, Noah would have built the ark. Right?
That would have been down in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's why Arkansas has name. You know, there you go. And so the ark would have left from America and then gone to the Middle East
in just 40 days, mind you.
Mount Ararat, right?
40 days and 40 nights.
When
40 days and 40 nights.
So for 55 years, I had just thought that was kind of a miracle that the ark was built somewhere in the Middle East, because, you know, Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mesopotamia, that's where the cradle of civilization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why would I think it's somewhere else? Because in school I was learning that's where the first writing was, right? In Mesopotamia, all that stuff, right? That the ark was built there, and then the rains came, and then it landed near there on some familiar mountain, Mount Ararat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, they created the Jewish traditions, right? Yeah. But it wasn't until the Book of Mormon musical that they said, and you know, something about Missouri is where, you know, it all.
Yeah, the whole setup is so odd. How Joseph Smith was able to indicate or say or teach that Adam built this altar here. The reason we want this Jackson County, Missouri to be the place of Zion is because this is where Adam and Eve lived. This was the Garden of Eden and all that. And when you really begin to start taking that into account, and Debbie, this is one of the reasons, this is one of the items, one of the themes that make me more curious about the history, the scholarly end of stuff, instead of saying, how can I improve my faith? Who cares? I want to find out where the hell Adam was, so to speak. You know what I mean? I like to engage in the mystery of history. We have a puzzle here to solve in the scriptures, and so that's what I naturally gravitate to. And this is an absolutely beautiful reason and example why I love that kind of thinking, and pretty much still do, is because sometimes it's a great challenge, and other times it's a great bit of utter ridiculousness, and you have to sift and find out which it is.
You don't have.
And so this is important. Debbie had asked me earlier. I'm not going to give you the whole interview. You can find it on their Latter Daily Digest website on Ask the Backyard Professor Anything. I'm just taking bits and clips tonight. But she had asked me earlier, why, as a former apologist, and now you're you've become more of a nuanced, not a nuanced apologist. I'm not an apologist. I'm more of I seek to understand. So, but I have stuck with the intellectual, more of the scholarly materials. Why did you go that direction? And so I was explaining to her that and that was one of the examples that Jean just beautifully brought up that makes a lot of interesting discussion because of Adam-on-Diamond and the altar that Adam supposedly built. They found it in Missouri, and the idea that the Garden of Eden was in America, that's extremely odd. And so how could he have gotten that idea, Joseph Smith? And so this is the type of stuff that whets my appetite more. So let's keep going with their. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to stop the screen, and now I will share it again and start over where we left off. Okay, here we go.
Not to sift, you just had to dig more than an inch deep.
Just 200.
Well, this is maybe a follow-up question to that is, so, I really think Joseph was like very much a mystic as far as his belief system,
Yeah.
and fantastical, very probably charismatic. I say he's probably the original Elvis. I mean, he probably walked in a room and just had this kind of magnetism. Mm-hmm. And, I think the church kind of has hidden some of those, like his swagger, with the rock and the hat and just his treasure digging. They've kind of like put that down. For at least when I was growing up, that wasn't discussed. And now they've kind of come out with those Joseph Smith papers and admitted some of his, maybe his off-site abilities. And now that they're admitting to some of his mysticism, do you think the church can sustain their core believers or their belief? Because I think people really did love Joseph and that ability to create, like, oh, look at this is where Adam and Eve are. This is where Jesus is going to come again. Like, this is the restoration. I think he had that ability to really sell what he was, his belief system
and himself.
And now that the church has kind of been like, well, no, he wasn't really like that. Now they're kind of saying, well, yeah, he was a little bit like that.
Well, Debbie,
are they going to lose the core belief, or can they sell it now like he did back in the day?
I was just thinking, what I was just thinking? Joseph was sort of like Donald Trump of his day. Donald Trump sells Donald Trump more than anything else, right? He's the best ever at this. He's the smartest person in the world. He has the largest crowds in record. Everything's braggadocio. Everything's bigger than life. And that does attract people, right? It attracts a certain type of people who want to follow. And so that's what somebody says, like, it's the followers that need a leader, and they almost force the leader to be more and more braggadocio, more charismatic, and they drive that person to be somebody. So, like, that's
but they completely whitewashed Joseph almost. They kind of whitewashed him throughout. Like, it seems like after Brigham Young, he kind of was like, no, we're not like that. We're this. So
I want to interject here real quick too. Dan Vogel's book on charisma, the last book he wrote, the real big thick one, and I've done some book reviews on my videos. He does demonstrate that one of the apologetic is that Joseph Smith was too uneducated to write the Book of Mormon, etc. And his education was limited. That is true, but that's not the only factor to take into account. Lots of his neighbors recognized a very high level of intelligence in him. And I don't know if I brought that up in this or not, but this intelligence factor absolutely plays into this, that none of us, until Vogel brought this out, and he shows with several different witnesses how that intelligence helped him to be ahead of the class. Even in his debating class, he joined as a Methodist, and he was in that for like 6-7 weeks or months. I can't remember how long. And he did very, very well. He outdid everybody else. Dan Vogel's book on charisma really brought that out. Charisma Under Pressure, I believe. And so I just wanted to bring that up. And the idea of whitewashing Joseph, yeah, we're all aware of that now. None of us really do know the real Joseph Smith, thanks to the church. And so, and this can be seen as a blessing in disguise, because now we can research it and study it out for ourselves. So I just wanted to add that also. Let's keep going with this.
I don't know, Kerry. What do you think? Like,
well, I like how Gene put that too. The followers act, and that's kind of Dan Vogel's theme in his book on charisma, his big book on charisma. Is he kind of showed that it's not a matter of Joseph being educated as such. He just had what you're tapping into, Debbie, is an innate intelligence, and it really did get people's attention. I mean, his followers, and whether you like them or not, you're irrelevant. His followers, some of them were extremely intelligent, the Pratt brothers. And I know we really don't like Brigham Young, but nobody but him could have made them survive in that stupid desert in Utah. I mean, the Great Salt Lake Valley, there's hardly any good water there back then, right? And yet he brings the whole bunch of them, and they made it. So there, but I do think, I think you're tapping into something good there too, Debbie, because Brigham didn't want to emulate Joseph Smith. Joseph was described as being able to talk until his voice went out. That takes about 4 to 6 hours. But he held his audience's attention. In fact, he was so, and he did say, hey, I like digging up the mysteries. You know, I like giving these guys something new. You know, gosh, if the church would just learn about their own prophet and begin to re-emulate that alone, that could solve their Exodus problem.
Like the King Follett speech.
Exactly.
That's a very good example of him.
That's beautiful.
He's like, let's open the book up and let's share mysteries. Let's think about the mysteries of God. And he talks about how he says he talks about how the German Bible tells us even more things. And when did you first read the King Follett discourse?
I was actually in my junior year because of my seminary teacher. That was he actually, believe it or not, as a seminary teacher, I mean, come on, give the guy kudos. He actually brought it up, and he kind of somewhat described. He didn't get into all the details and all, but for a seminary teacher in 1977 to bring up the King Follett discourse to the kids when I'd never heard of it before, and then of course, you know, you get back to church with your friends, and we had a particular ward. It was a weird ward. We were on the border between high schools. So part of our ward kids went to the other high school, and part of us went to the one I went to. So we would get together in church, and it was a lot of fun because we were all good friends because of the church. But during school, we were rivals. But we would get together and compare notes and all. And nobody in Sunday school, even before my mission, ever brought up the King Follett discourse. Nobody had any idea what I was talking about except one of the teachers, and that was the one who said, well, we don't talk about the mysteries.
And I'm, you know what I'm thinking about is in that.
And now here too I'm thinking that was part of my reason for loving those mysteries, because as I read, now my dad was he was pretty conservative fundamentalist. I don't mean polygamous fundamentalist. I mean just rock solid TBM Mormon. And we had the McConkeys, and we had the LeGrand Richards, and we had the James E. Faust, and yes, everyone had the Paul Dunn's books, and the books of Bruce R. McConkie and Spencer W. Kimball, and and Harold B. Lee, and all that. And Dad did have a set of the Journal of Discourses, and I was looking in those periodically from time to time. They weren't as interesting because the print was so small, in those books. But yeah, this theme of they kept telling us in Sunday school, well, don't study the mysteries, leave the mysteries alone. And I kept asking why, because a mystery is to be solved, and I get into this. So that was let me add this back on, and we shall see.
Joseph Smith brings out Hebrew words, and he talks about how the German Bible will say things that you can learn more from it. And in a way,
and he was doing that as a signal to, I say signal, it's not a conspiracy, but as a way to, Niebuhr was in the audience. Is it Alexander Niebuhr? The gentleman, a very, very important, he was Hugh Nibley's great grandfather.
Wow.
And he was the German Jew. He was the Jew that Joseph Smith was bouncing ideas off after he learned Hebrew from Saxus. And he was trying to figure out, what does this word Elohim mean? Is it always in the plural, etc.? Well, Saxus wasn't having it, but Niebuhr was a recent convert, and he was Jewish, and so Joseph Smith had someone to talk to. But he was a German Jew, so he knew the Hebrew and the Hebrew. So it was kind of a fun little tie-in, but I do believe that's why Joseph Smith brought out the German Bible.
So you think he was trying to impress that guy?
So he was trying to include him to make it, because he was a recent convert from a completely foreign country, and he's over here in Nauvoo, America.
And one thing that Joseph was good at is spotting talent and the people who are interested,
especially when their last name was Bennett.
He would bring people in and give them assignments, give them leadership positions really early, right? And
that was a flaw.
Sidney Rigdon. So it's a flaw, and it's a curse and a blessing, right?
All right, I'll grant that. Yeah.
Because coaxing the egos of somebody else, he's able to be like Donald Trump and be inclusive at the same time, right? And on one hand, that helps build the church up. On the other hand, he has to excommunicate them once they think later on that they're all that.
Isn't it interesting that once you start getting he saved the church by sending the missionaries overseas, Kimball and Young and those guys, when they went to Britain, you remember, and they just baptized tens of thousands, and they just came over in boatloads, literally, not even symbolically. So in a way that saved the church. However, what it did is it began because this would probably happen today. Look at Nemo the Mormon being excommunicated now. The Brits don't think like the Americans, right? So by bringing those people over here, it began a rotating door of conversions and excommunications, even of his very closest friends, I think. But in a way, see, on the one hand, Joseph said, give me the liberty, give me the right to think as I want. And on the thing I would have loved about Joseph Smith if I'd lived back then with him, and I would have absolutely supported him with my entire life, I would have been his bodyguard, is when he said, the old guy, I believe his name was Brown. I wonder, this thought just dawned on me. In the MTC, in the missionary lessons, when we were memorizing Brown, we had a Mr. Brown. I wonder if that was him. Anyway, he castigated the quorum of the 12 and the 70 in the church because this gentleman had an interpretation of the beasts in the book of Revelation. And Joseph stood up and opposed the church's opposition to this gentleman. And he said, don't you dare shackle me with creeds. Don't you even pretend you're going to stop me from thinking and understanding and believing the scripture in my own way, not my house, no way, no how, knock it off. You're not kicking him out.
Joseph was enamored.
We had Joseph Smith to oppose Dallin Oaks right now, right?
Joseph Smith was enamored with the founding of America, right?
Oh, absolutely.
the
His
nation.
mom, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, his grandfather fought in the war.
And and so probably war stories were in this family,
Absolutely.
and he instilled democratic principles
It
within
was
the
all about
church.
liberty. Yes, liberty of thinking and believing what you want. He said there is no way. That's the other thing that's so interesting about Joseph Smith. Like him or hate him, it's all right. It's all good. But the man defended. This is where Mormonism has taken off a right turn, and they're running off the track. He really, truly, I mean, physically defended the right of people to have a belief, even if it disagreed with his.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you got.
But I think the early church was so much more charismatic than it is today. Like I can't imagine being back in that time with these kind of intellectual powerhouses talking or creating this kind of belief in almost like a utopia of what America should be, what people should be, what we could be. You know, that's kind of inspiring in itself. So I can see why people were absolutely drawn to Joseph and that kind of freedom of thought, for sure.
So in a way, I was bringing up the King Follett discourse because when Joseph Smith starts using all the Hebrew words and defines them and talks about them, in a way, Carrie Schertz is charismatic, and Carrie Schertz reminds me of Joseph Smith, and Carrie Schertz, the backyard professor, brings up definitions of ancient words, right? Carrie Schertz,
That's right.
The 21st century.
Carrie's way more interesting than anyone in the 12 right now. I will say that. In fact, that's what they totally lack is charisma. I'm surprised because you would think you would want charismatic leaders, and usually that's what you see successful in any other religion, as far as the mega religions, is these charismatic guys who can get up and preach and inspire. And when I watch conference, especially in the last like 15 forever, it's like this droning monotone, and it came to pass, you know.
And you know, all the inspiration nowadays is like made up faithful stories. And one thing about Carrie Schertz and the backyard professor is Carrie brings back the school in Sunday school. Carrie wants people to learn.
Thank you. That you honor me greatly, and I do appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I was going to try to skip this part. They really poured it on, and I do appreciate it because that is true. I do like to get into the meat. We've all been fed milk our whole lives, and we're sick. It will physically kill you if all you do is consume milk. So I want to throw some meat and vegetables into my discussions. But I did appreciate their kindness, and so I mean it's already in the recording now, so I'm stuck with it. But I thought I had that marked anyway. That was nice because that's what I do like to do, and the reason and. See, here's almost like a paradox, and it's okay. I can live with this. I am part of me is angry at the deception Joseph Smith practiced, and that the modern church practices. Part of me just thrills with Joseph Smith because he did stretch the minds of the people. He stretched his mind. He never ended up on the blasé platitude of faith-promoting stories. He jumped into the scriptures. He jumped into the original languages. He studied hard as he could where to get ideas. And it is true, he did utilize a lot of contemporary sources in a lot of his scriptures. And that, again, this is part of the deception dichotomy, inspiration or deception. You know, I mean, really, if you can get people to believe you are a prophet, why not carry that on? Because it does give you great clout and prestige. I get that. I can actually forgive him for that in some respects. I'm trying to be as gentle on him as I can in some ways, and in other ways I do castigate him, but I castigate today's church even more simply because they have forgotten Joseph Smith's heritage. There's no question about it. You compare the two. You compare the sermons Joseph Smith has given, and you compare what Russell Nelson's saying for the last 10 years. There's no comparison whatsoever. Joseph Smith, hands down, is vastly more instructive, intellectual, scripturally based, really fun to read, etc. We just don't have that anymore. The charisma is gone. But even worse is the instructional rounding out and elevating of our souls and minds and spirit is gone in today's church too. So I was very flattered that they put me in that comparison. It's a wrong comparison. I'm nowhere near that, but I try. I'll put it that way. So let's keep going for just a few more minutes. There's a couple more things. I'm hoping that we get to it. I'm unworthy of it, but I'm going to try to be worthy of it. So yeah, no, I like the idea of let's explore, let's learn. We're not going to all agree. I mean, look, even all of us Exmos don't all agree. I know I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but we actually have fights over doctrine too. It's all good. It doesn't matter. We're in the process of trying to, how do you put this, rough and tumble forward instead of just stagnating with the same stuff. That bores us, right?
Even myself.
Our minds are better. But I'll tell you what, Deb, the reason you hit the nail on the head once again, and I don't accept everything the man said. I really don't. But I was an ardent student of Hugh Nibley, and I watched the recording of his commencement address to BYU, 1984, 1982. I can't remember which.
Is this Beware one?
Well, the one where he said it was the fatal shift from leaders to managers.
Yes, beware of the management leadership.
Something like that. He was telling, this is so interesting because I can't remember who. This is going to come across as gossip or third-hand information because it genuinely is, and I get it. It's okay. You don't have to believe a damn thing I say right now, but this is what happened to me. Was it John Twetness? I can't, and I know, I get it. It's convenient. He's dead. We can't check with him. I would love it if we could. Someone told me, I was real good friends with John Twetness. It might have been Matt Roper. I don't know. Someone told me that Hugh Nibley gave that discussion the shift from leaders to managers. He gave it as a commencement address because he understood the students would not comprehend what he was talking about for the most part. It wasn't for the students. It was his way of trying to help the Mormon leaders out of the muck because they were sinking and stuck in mediocrity. And it offended him. And so he said, okay, they want me to do a commencement speech. I'm going to do it on leaders versus managers. Now, my challenge to your audience, sincerely, if I believe this is available online, I'll check and see.
I just looked it up.
Oh, thank you. I've got it. Would you leave a link on there?
In the description, there'll be a link.
I'll challenge you guys, you too. I will do this also. I'm not going to give you an assignment if I don't fulfill it. I have read this talk 30 times, and it never gets old.
It's like
right
scripture.
Now, 2024, it is needed more than it was when it was given in 1980. Does it say when it was given, Gene? Was it 84, 83, 82? Was I kind of close? I'm sure that was, I can't remember. But anyway.
August 19th, 1983.
Oh, 1983. Okay. I knew that was the right. So
I was just coming off of my honeymoon Well, it'd have been
Oh,
like
no
2 years
kidding.
later.
This talk
No wonder that talk is a
absolutely one
flop
of the most
to me.
important talks that Mormonism needs right now, and they won't. They'll completely ignore it. And the reason, and I know this is my speculation, and I've noticed lately on my channel, I've been picking up the BYP response stuff, and they're getting a few more views, but I've noticed several of the Mormons are starting to comment, and they really don't like what I'm saying. They are calling me all kinds of names now, and they are attacking me personally, and that means I'm doing something right. I'm okay with that.
Right.
It's good, because it's not about me, it's about the church leadership, as far as I'm concerned. And so if I can get them riled up and say, you are a damned liar, etc., then we can have a discussion, because that's how they're defending the brethren. You can't challenge the brethren, but I do.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, you can challenge the brethren,
Exactly
especially when they become managers instead of leaders.
And exactly, it's what
And
Jesus was doing. It's
Pardon?
what Jesus was doing. He was challenging the religious leaders of the day. That was his whole thing.
Good point. Yes, sir.
So there you go. I've compared you now to Jesus and Joseph.
Oh, no, don't go
Let's see what else I can do.
Compare me
Well, and
to
I think the one thing that, and Carrie pointed this out in other podcasts he did, that like confirmation bias, where you're only supposed to study, and the church even is very big on this, like only can read the sources that we give you, only keep yourself in this like tube or this bubble. And it's basically become a church like in the modern era of, instead of like, I know, it's really like, I feel. So it's really become based on feelings and then confirming those feelings. And the one thing I'm curious about, because technology and information and podcasters and anyone can get on and challenge church or leadership or doctrine in a public forum, do you think the church is sustainable with that kind of like limited scope teaching as far as membership and keeping them like cattle? Because like Carrie said, like you're now being attacked because you question the status quo. You must be onto something.
Yeah, that's a good question. My suspicion is there will always, you do get there will always be a core to the church. But you get some real new, brand new apostates. I'll call them apostates, exmos. They've been they're angry. I want to tear this church completely down. I want to destroy the church, and I'll do everything, just like on the other side, missionaries. You get your mission call. I'm going to go convert the state of Missouri. You know what I mean? So you have these extremes, and it comes to the point as we get through all of this, as we read our books, we change the type of books we're reading, we change the type of information we're learning, etc. It is a maturing process, and it's a process. You can't just go from dark to light or from light to dark instantly. There's no shooting out the light bulb. This is a sunset type of a process or a sunrise type of a process. And you get to the point to where you realize that's not even necessary. I don't have to. I get it. There is pain and there is a lot of anger when you feel betrayal, when you feel cheated, or I put my life into that and that can't come back. Well, that's a source of good anger, right? Every now and then that one still bubbles up in me. And when it does, it is really, it really hits you. And you go, son of a, I really did lose 30 years of my life. I could have been doing something else.
And tens of thousands of dollars.
And hundreds of thousands for the rich, right? Mitt Romney gives $6 million a year in tithing. $6 million a year. So you have
throw some.
Yeah, multiply that by 13 years, and holy shishka and Bob, that's a lot of dough. I'm having a lot of fun with this. I don't want to take it all away from Gene and and Debbie, though. So I've been on this long enough. I'll stop it at that. I'll encourage you, go over to Gene's channel, and I will leave a link below in the description here, but it was a fun interview. Gene is having a lot of very interesting people on his channel, lesser known podcasters and stuff. That's why he keeps having me back. But he just recently interviewed Debbie, and that was a week or two ago, and her backstory is absolutely rich and phenomenal. She is an amazing person. So I'll encourage you to go see that. But I just wanted to say it is fun to have a discussion. It's fun to look at the ins and the outs. It's fun to look at the successes and the failures, not only in our own life. And I know I hate going through the failures. That's a bummer. It sucks. But it makes the successes that much sweeter. So my whole point in this is to encourage you all, keep your head above the water. Keep chugging. It does get better. It genuinely does. It's worth studying deeper, more interesting materials than what the church has either allowed you to study or has encouraged you not to study. I would encourage you to study, and I always fall back on Joseph Smith as the example, which the church just simply doesn't use. And if they do, they're somewhat hypocritical as church leadership goes, because now everyone says, well, they don't have time. You know, they've got to administer the church. Bonk. Joseph Smith did too. Joseph Smith actually physically in his person helped build the temples. Joseph Smith helped build the church buildings. So this idea that, well, you know, we got to give the brethren a break. They haven't been able to study and all that. Yeah, that's because they're lazy learners. Joseph Smith did. Brigham Young was as busy as anybody, and he had time to study the scriptures and to share the mysteries. So, you know, in a way, I get it, but in another way, I disagree with that. So don't excuse the leaders. They are not emulating Joseph Smith in that regard. And the church suffers for it, because the best part of us, the best part of us, other than our eternal soul, is our eternal mind. And the church just doesn't encourage you to use that. It wants to emphasize faith instead of knowledge. You go ahead and go look back up Joseph Smith. He talked a lot more about knowledge, and he loved that a lot more than he did about faith. Yeah, he talked about faith. Yes, he gave some sermons on faith. I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm saying he emphasized knowledge, because a man is saved only so fast as he gains knowledge. He didn't go with faith at all. So anyway, that's good enough for now. Thanks for watching. The Backyard Professor Responds. Much more to come just as soon as I can. Thank you. Appreciate all your support and encouragement and love. I love you all. I got to go. The sun is setting. Woo.